Welcome to the Power Exit Podcast. This show is dedicated to business owners who want to scale up, plan smarter, and prepare for the ultimate exit. We'll talk with M&A experts and owners who've been through the process to provide actionable advice so that you can sell your business on your terms and without regret. I'm John Marsh. Join me as we prepare to take control of your exit. Steve, welcome to the Power Exit Podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to help you sell your business and the friendship that we've developed afterwards. So really the goal here today is to talk about your transaction, the history of your business, what you built. You know, we want to leave the audience, if there are any of them, with some nuggets about what it takes to build a successful business, how to prepare for a transaction. So I'm excited to have you here because you've got one of the stories that is kind of interesting. You've always struck me as a hustler, right?
Thank you.
You get
You
stuff
got the
done.
deal done, so thank you. Yeah.
Well, and it's an honor to be able to help people. But let's talk about what you did before I got involved. Like, how did you tell us a little bit about what Peachtree Blinds is, what they do, who they serve, and how you started the business?
So the Peachtree Blinds story was a retail custom window treatment business. All the basics that everybody needs in their home: blinds, shades, shutters, and eventually we expanded to add draperies, and we became more expertise in motorization as technology got a lot better.
Yep.
Eventually, then we saw an opportunity to develop an exterior product line as well, which is actually doing still great to this day. So I think outdoor motorized screens, they represent a one touch of a button screen in porch. So people apply those, whether they're just trying to get rid of the bugs, maybe block the sun. A lot of restaurants use them. They'll apply the vinyl, which just kind of makes the whole environment more comfortable.
Yeah.
And so our primary business was focused on retail, not as much commercial. I'd say probably 95% of our clientele was in the at-home market. 5% was some commercial, individually owned properties. So we never went after whole hospitals or whole school systems, as an example. There's a market for that. That just wasn't a space we ever wanted to be in. We like that more direct to the consumer approach and that one-on-one opportunity.
Yeah.
So it worked out great. So our business people, commercial, a dentist that owns it, or an individual restaurant. That was the other 5%.
Gotcha. So how'd you get into it?
How'd we get into it?
And I know the story. I'm trying to get it out of you.
It's a good story.
Yeah. Tell us what you did before, and then, okay, you saw this opportunity, and
we're going to go way back in time, but we'll keep it reasonably short. Okay. So once upon a time, 2 lifetimes ago for me, I was actually in medical sales, and I took an opportunity in the Austin, Texas market. Super small company, ridiculously big territory. I had from Laredo to Shreveport, all the way down to Brownsville. So there's a lot of windshield time. I was on the road quite a bit. So as I did that, my wife and daughter were with me, of course, at the time. The daughter ends up in preschool. Now I get a wife with nothing to do, and dad's on the road a few days a week.
Yeah.
And so she ran into somebody who started to talk to her about the window treatment business. That person turned out to be one of my best friends that I'd known for now he and I are coming up on 40 years. So we went all the way back to the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. And my friend's name was Bob, and he had started a window treatment business here in Atlanta. And he said, hey, I can give you something to do where you're at in Austin, Texas. And so it worked for her. She was a little bit of a part-time.
Yeah.
And I was watching her interactions. I was watching what was happening. I also saw how the margins looked. And so 2 things happened. As her little business was starting to develop and grow, I saw that my opportunity was not what I hoped it to be. We were never from Texas, so there was no desire to stay there. And so we're trying to figure out as a family, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, my friend Bob calls me one day, and he says, hey, if you're really not looking to stay where you're at, I could probably use you here. One, he did it out of friendship. 2, I kind of understood the numbers a little bit.
Yeah.
And as the company was really getting big, he says, I got an opportunity for you. I said, great. We moved, we came to Atlanta, and then we became kind of part of the original Peachtree family. Bob had a couple partners at the time. Business was blowing up big, but they were doing a lot of silly things wrong. The more they made in sales, the more money these guys were taking. They were thinking one day, hey, could there ever be a downturn? I'm in the background going, hey, guys, one day there's going to be a downturn.
And so you're not an owner at this point.
I'm not an owner.
You're a W-2.
I'm W-2. I'm actually out running sales calls. I'm giving them some knowledge of what I have, and we're all just having a good open line of communication.
Yeah.
And that one day came, And when that one day came, the company quickly was out of cash flow. The existing partners at that point weren't getting along. I kind of felt like I was watching the Beatles unravel. There was this great combination of talent in the room that built this great thing, and now they're toward the end and they can't even talk to each other. And what needed at the time was a little bit of money just to keep it going. They all walked away. They all just said, "We're done." And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, this is the craziest thing. This is a viable entity. And one individual, and I'll skip his name just for the purpose of the podcast, but he was liable for the phone bill. And he comes to me and he's got this horrible look on his face. And I knew how much money he had been making.
Yep.
He had a wife who was doing great. They were doing well because I can't pay the phone bill. Well, okay, well, enough from whatever you did with your money. How much is the phone bill? It's $4,000. I go, you've got the lottery ticket. I don't think he even understood to this day what I was talking about because at that point, there was no Google, there was no internet presence. Everything depended on the phone number and something we used to call a phone book, right? And so I said, if we pay the bill, we control the phone numbers. Every client that's ever called us has that phone number. That's what we did.
Well,
And so I paid the phone bill for $4,000. We joined up, me and this individual, to be unnamed for whatever reason. And we started again. And it was kind of in zero. There was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of customers who had paid a deposit to get their product that didn't receive it. And paying a deposit is typical in our industry. You pay half up front, you pay the rest when it's done. And so we knew there's going to be a lot of negativity. Our competitors were going to feast on whatever they thought was going on. And I said, look, all we got to do, bad news will go away eventually. Just finish the jobs, right? Let's just finish the jobs, get rid of anybody who's potentially going to be angry. We'll collect the balance that they rightfully owe. It'll go away in a few months or we will.
yeah.
One way or the other, somebody's going to go away in a few months.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate that we cleaned it all up. And sure enough, time goes by, people forget. We started from there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you were opportunistic, right? You saw an opportunity to buy a phone number and basically start this. I don't want to say from scratch, but like the phoenix,
Yeah.
raising from the
A
ashes.
little bit of a running start. I think the clientele at that point might have already hit 40,000 clients at that point. So there's a decent customer base. And of course, this was the Atlanta market, which was, blowing up every which way you looked. So
Yeah.
new construction and opportunity was everywhere you looked. We just said, hey, let's keep the name. Let's grab that number. Let's keep those clients as happy and positive, and we'll go from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, $4,000 got us going.
What year was that?
Boy, what was it? 25. So maybe 2000-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere
All right.
around the turn right there.
All right.
98, 99.
So let's fast forward from 2000 to when you hired Marsh Creek.
Right.
What was the decision? What was going on to
Right.
say, hey, it's time to sell the business?
Yeah. Popular old sayings. So I probably won't say it correctly, right? But you can always make more money. You cannot always make more time. And so to build that business, right? And I'm still married to the love of my life. Never been divorced. We're coming up on our 42nd wedding anniversary. But in the building process, I missed everything, right? We got a daughter, so there was a lot of missed opportunities to watch her grow up and do certain things. And she doesn't hate me, luckily, so that's a positive. But I wanted that second chance. So she blessed us with grandchildren, and they live very close by. We're like, I could continue this pace and make even more money. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
I want the time.
Yeah. Well, that's good for you because we talk about something. Well, two things just to add on to your statement. It's a challenge for us as entrepreneurs, business owners, to realize that our prime money making years are also when our kids need us the
Yeah.
most.
Yeah, that's kind of messed up, isn't
It's
it?
a weird juxtaposition, and it's something that is a blessing to be able to navigate, but
Right.
it's challenging.
I
So
think Colonel Sanders started later, so he got away with
there
it,
you go. Right.
So if we could all start at 60 when everything was done, yeah, it'd be a lot easier.
I wanna
But
be
yeah,
on the golf course.
It doesn't, yeah, me too.
Seeing
right?
my grandkids like you
That's right.
at 60.
Right.
So that's so time is on your side until it's not. That's a common saying I like to
Right.
use when you're talking to prospects. You've got to control the process. You've got to say, hey, I want to exit this business, but you've got to exit when there's still plenty of room going forward. So you've had a long runway since closing. You've stayed on for 2 years.
Correct.
So, and that was part of the transaction. And talk us through that mentality. Hey, I've built this business. I bought the phone number in 2000 or so. and I sold the business, but I've still got this tail period or this runway that I'm giving the
Right.
buyer. How has that been mentally for you to say, "Hey, I'm no longer the owner of this business. It feels like you've got a great buyer who has given you autonomy." But just walk us through that. Like, how's that transition from owner to employee been for
Yeah,
you?
it's a little tough. I almost feel like I'm on a farewell tour, where I can kind of see that the end's coming. Luckily, I do have the autonomy, so we got very fortunate in who the buyer was in respects to they don't want to come in and change every single thing that we've ever done. So
Right.
sort of that's made it relatively easy. But they're good communicators, so whenever we do need to make what I consider maybe a significant change or something that's going to change the dynamic, they're on board. I think they appreciate the experience I had, so they're not challenged me a lot.
Yeah.
So I feel, and I've talked to other business owners, not always that case. I
Yeah.
think that was a real blessing for us that it's been smooth. Um, but as I get closer to the end of that 2 years, I got a lot of conflicting emotions. Right?
Sure.
I raised this kid, right? We built this biz, so now we're going to walk away from it to a degree.
Yeah.
It'll always, be there, somebody I could talk to, but it's there's mixed feelings, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, let's not skip over that
Yeah,
because the connection that an entrepreneur has to their business is deep, right?
right.
It's not an 8 to 5, it's not a 9 to 5, it's 24/7,
All day
right?
long.
And it the success of that business depends on, hey, can I continue to provide for my family? So it's deep, right?
Well, yeah, it's the
But
topic of every conversation you ever had as you're building it, right?
yeah,
Whether you're thinking about, hey, what can we go on vacation, or hey, the furnace broke.
yeah,
How's the business doing,
yeah.
right? And anything and everything that you're talking about, the business was the genesis. It was the basis of all of it. It was the sun. Everything revolved around, hey, how's the business doing?
But what I admired about you is that there was that emotional connection. You cared deeply, but you also saw this as a means to an end.
Right.
You realized your identity is not tied to Peachtree Blinds
Right.
completely, right? You've got a wonderful wife, and we hear the saying, "Oh, the better half." It is no more true, or or it
For
is
me, yeah,
super true in your
yeah,
situation.
absolutely.
Gail's amazing, but you've got these grandkids. You've moved kind of north a little bit to the Georgia mountains, North
Yep.
Georgia mountains. So talk to me a little bit about Life 2.0, and while you're answering this question, what can an owner who's in your shoes, or maybe 5 years ago where you were contemplating doing an exit, what advice would you give to those owners to say, hey, prepare yourself now
Right.
for what's going to happen in 5 years?
Yeah, so I think probably 2, 3 things. One, you gotta have that key person, I think, that you can relinquish a lot of duties, a lot of responsibilities to. I think for me, the whole process is a weaning process. Just like somebody who's quitting cigarettes or something else, I didn't wanna quit this cold. So I think that key employee kinda helped where in pieces and gradual time that goes by, it's like, "Okay, let me teach you now how to do this part," which is an owner's thing, "and do this part."
Right.
And so slowly but surely, you peel off some of the layers, but I didn't just close myself out.
Right.
So find that key employee that you can really depend upon. Somebody, if you're fortunate, that acts like an owner, that doesn't have any
Yep.
equity, that's the dream scenario. Second, and you'll attest to this because this is how you kind of help me to help you to help, keep a good set of books. To our embarrassment, we didn't have the best set of books. It would have made the process easier for you, me. So anybody I think who wants to sell, have your financials tight, accurate, use a good CPA, make sure you've got the right data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
If I can just add to that for
Yeah.
a minute, I've got a gentleman I'm talking to who runs a successful business, makes a lot of money. But he has not run this business to sell. He has been minimizing his income so that he has fewer tax liabilities.
Okay.
Now, that's okay. He can decide to do that, but he's in for deflated his EBITDA, which means that he's not going to get the same multiple. So we're going to go through this exercise where we identify these ad backs, we present them to the market, but that is not the best scenario.
Right.
It's usually a choice. Hey, I'm going to minimize my taxes, or I'm building this to sell. Right. So you need to go through that. So I'm just adding on to what you said. That's great advice.
Right.
And don't beat yourself up. Right.
Right.
Financials is the most common reason deals don't trade.
Right.
Businesses don't sell. So yours weren't that bad.
No, it wasn't too
Um,
horrible. So.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I'm going to say is, and this isn't always a possibility, but you were able to bring that trusted employee in to what we were doing,
Right.
kind of put her into the circle of trust, if you will, which allowed you to continue running the business, continue contributing to increased profit, increased revenue, because that's the last thing you want to see when you're
Correct.
selling a business is during marketing, a decline. And she was instrumental in helping you. So talk to me a little bit about, without her name or anything, but what's her future look like in the business? Because it feels like you've taken considerable effort to set her up to continue in the business while you slowly
Yeah,
exit.
I think if the thought to sell the business was in the back of my mind, meeting this individual and seeing the opportunity that we could give her and vice versa brought selling the business to the front of my mind. Okay, now I got it. Now I
Yeah.
got somebody that we can actually, work this with because I kind of knew from the get-go that if I sold, I'd want to walk away. Again, I want that time back, right? And I know some people sell a particular business and stay on for 5 years or whatever their scenarios. I knew for me, I was going to want to go. So the opportunity for this girl, and her name's Jessica, was great. She's super smart, absorbs knowledge, loves the industry, loves the challenge. If she doesn't know something, she wants to figure it all
Yeah.
out. So this was the classic think like an owner person who doesn't have any equity in the game. And so her motivations every day was the same as ours.
Yeah.
It's do the right thing for everybody, blah, 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 blah. Her opportunity is when I am officially done, she's probably going to step in, take over that daily leadership role. It's probably based on her background and the knowledge I have, she's probably going to make twice as much of an income with this opportunity than she would have made in any other career choice she
Yeah.
made. So for her, she's going to be near a six-figure income. She likes to be in charge. It's going to change her whole family's life.
That's great.
Yeah. So we're
And
happy.
and kudos to you for doing that, setting that up the right way. I mean, it wasn't always altruistic, I'd imagine. You needed someone to help run the back office while you're out there beating the streets, right?
Correct. Yeah, somebody's got to
Um,
support it.
yeah.
Right.
So, that's not always feasible for someone to say, "Hey, I'm gonna let someone in."
And we did it
But
kind of in the face. So my lovely wife, who we refer to Gail, or she was that back office person. So as a team, she took care of the inside. I took care of everything that represented the outside. And of course, there's some overlapping stuff in the middle, and we both had to talk. This being introduced to Jessica, getting her on board, actually allowed my wife to fully retire 3 years ago, because the first thing Jessica had to learn was what Gail was doing. And so once she mastered that, Gail was free to go on about her way. And now Jessica's picking up the rest of what I know. And actually, she knows everything now.
yeah.
She sees me coming. She just figures I got some new chore for her to do. So they're not as thrilled to see me come in anymore, but they love me, but they're like, what are you going to make me do today?
Yeah,
So
no,
it's okay.
I
So
understand that.
I bring them lunch. They're okay. So they're fine.
Awesome. All right. So, let's talk about your decision to hire an advisory firm.
Right.
One of the common things we come up against is business owners saying, "Hey, we've got an offer on the table. We know the buyer," and that was similar in your situation. You knew a buyer. Now, granted, you saw the benefits in hiring a firm like ours.
Right.
Um, could you have gotten the deal done in the same way? And this is a softball, but let's talk about the things that we did in Marsh Creek that helped you have a successful transaction. And maybe when you're talking about that, talk through the offer that was there when you hired me, what happened with that and the things we had to navigate.
To answer, of course, I think the answer is no. I don't think that this could have happened if I tried to do it on my own. I realize you could sell your own house and probably be successful at it. But on the other hand, what's the saying about uh, if you represent yourself as a lawyer, you have a fool for a client. So there's too many financials, too many details involved. So I definitely felt like we needed some level of an expertise. The challenges that I knew going into this and being in my industry as long was the fact that I was the business. We didn't manufacture anything. We didn't own particular assets. So there wasn't any long list of, hey, all this is worth X amount of dollars. So at the end of the day, we were selling a name that was popular. We created a lot of goodwill. Um, Not the easiest of sales, right? We don't even really truly have what you'd consider repetitive customers. So if I was in the lawn care business, you say, hey, I got 500 customers and they pay me. Well, my only hope is that you moved or you add it onto your house, or maybe we squeezed a referral out of you. Other than that, most transactions were done.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what we saw as the negative. We had an opportunity. So as I was contemplating the sale, I thought the easiest way for me to get my deal closed was to find somebody who was already in my industry. Yep. Not that we're the most complicated of industries, but just somebody who had the general everyday working knowledge, saw the volume that we were bringing, saw the presence we had in the market. So yeah, hey, there's value there, and we buy it. And we did have somebody, and then that's when I got you involved because I mean immediately the questions, the digging, the fight, it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like for me.
Yeah.
I needed somebody who could say, okay, this is what they're really looking for. This is what we have to provide for them.
Yeah.
So,
And, that's an interesting, let's talk about that for a minute. Buyers are going to want to get as much information as they can out of your business, out of you before they make an offer. We're not going to let that happen, right? We want to maintain confidentiality, and our job is to kind of keep the process moving. And we're not going to do diligence until we have an offer on the table. We're, of course, going to give enough information so that a buyer can make an informed decision and an offer that they can stand behind. But we're also not going to share employee list or customer list.
well, and not to interrupt, one of the things I didn't really think about, but just the fact that you knew to advise, hey, we have to have a confidentiality. So in my industry, if I were trying to handle this on my own and maybe word got out, competition would feast on that in a negative way.
Right.
Right. So many people are going to get 2, 3 quotes. The last thing I needed was a competitor going, oh, that guy, he sold or he closed the business.
Yeah.
I heard this.
Yeah.
So that would have been super detrimental, not only to me short term, but obviously it would have killed any opportunity to sell and keep it going.
Yeah.
So keeping it closed and private.
Business is cutthroat.
Absolutely.
And if you've got, like you said, 3 quotes, what's to prohibit a salesperson from saying, hey, are these guys going to be in business in 6 months? Or the owner of that business saying, hey, I'm going to go grab his employees.
Right.
They know the industry. They know the space. So confidentiality is very important. It was key to touch on that. But, and then also making sure that we're sharing information with a buyer who's serious and has the financial capacity to get the deal done. So again, without naming names, but that buyer who was involved, they were interested, they were serious, but they kept changing the offer
Over and over and over.
didn't have the money.
Right.
So obviously we didn't have exclusivity at that point. We were just negotiating an offer. So behind the scenes, my team was drumming up more interest in the business,
Right.
which is commonplace that an owner who has an unsolicited offer is going to say, hey, I don't need an advisor. I'm going to close this deal. Well, 50% of deals fall through. And, the model is oftentimes to drag an owner through a process, wear him down, beat him up, and change the price and terms, which is in general not a good thing, but it's definitely not controlling the process. You built this thing by grabbing a phone number and growing it from basically zero or nothing to where it was when you sold it.
We wanted a fair price, but we didn't want to give it away after
Take that same control in selling the business.
That's right.
That's what we do. That's what a good advisor is going to do. So, Steve, one of the things that happens during the process is, well, let's talk about the process, right? We're marketing the business for sale. We're developing marketing materials, understanding your business, talking about how revenue comes in, what the profit is, adjusted EBITDA, all these different things, right? But what happens when an offer comes, right? You've got this team of advisors you've built, obviously me as your M&A advisor, a CPA, your internal folks, your lawyer. Kind of talk the listener through, what happens after that. Hey, we've got an LOI, the deal's done, right?
Right.
No.
I think for somebody, a good analogy, it's like when you're trying to buy or sell a house, right? There's inspections and closings and things that have to be checked out. So when I came to this process, you're right. You get excited. You get the offer. Woohoo! We got the number on the page. I like that number. Where's my check? Not that easy, right? Were you and your firm probably shined the brightest to help us get this to conclusion was, again, our books weren't horrible, right? They weren't misleading, but they weren't as tight as they should have been. I think any other advisor might have said, listen, this is your responsibility. Come back when you have a nice set of books. But what you guys did, you especially, you drove up to my office, you sat down with my wife, Gail, you looked at what we had. We had just changed CPA and accounting firms. Which had no reflection on what was going on. That was something that happened on their end. But you worked hand in hand with our newest CPA, and you guys made it like a team. So you kind of took what was not perfect and brought it up to speed so that we could go back to prospective buyers and go, hey, listen, right here it is. This is justified why the price is what it should be. You helped out a huge amount by doing that. If I had to do that on my own,
Yeah.
probably would have never happened.
Well, that's why you pay us, right?
That's right.
That's what we do.
Yeah, it was money well spent.
But the other part of this is you had your own attorney, and I jokingly say, landlords. Well, it's not a joke. Landlords and attorneys kill deals.
Right.
Now, you didn't take my recommendations. You had already had a relationship or whatever with this attorney. Luckily, knock on wood, he was great. He was an M&A specific attorney. But behind the scenes, your team is working for you, right? You've got your CPA, you've got me, you've got your attorney. Kind of shed some light on that process, because oftentimes business owners get a 120-page document from their attorney that they don't understand, right? Because it's specific to this thing you're often going to do only one time in your life.
Yeah.
So, how did your team work together? What was your involvement in that process?
I think the thing that stood out the most to me, and this is one thing that we always drove building our business, communication's always the
Yeah.
key. I said it to everybody. Right now, I'm becoming this old guy, so I guess younger people and want old guy advice, right? Whether it's friendships or marriage or business, etc. I think the answer is the same thing: open lines of communication. So Zach was the attorney. He is an M&A specialist. So you're open to take his calls, vice versa. You guys had more conversations between the two of you, I think, sometimes than I was involved.
Yeah.
But it was all for the right purpose, right?
Yeah, and the hardest thing for me is, we will work with anybody, but oftentimes attorneys want to
Yeah.
work behind the scenes and not work collaboratively, and not attorneys, CPAs as well.
Power struggle.
The best deals are when we're all on the same team and we, yes, stay
It
in our
was a team,
lanes.
right?
Yeah.
Nobody was trying to power struggle
Yeah.
the other. Nobody was trying to say, "Hey, I got this degree, which makes me smarter, therefore I'm the most superior." None of that mattered. I think that's where the fortunate part for me. Everybody I brought into the fold to help me sell the business gelled as a team right away.
Yeah.
Made it much easier for us.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and something that comes to mind in our reflecting on your deal. We had a broken LOI. We had a buyer who couldn't come up with the deal. We spent a ton of time and effort sending documents back and forth. And the buyer was a non-traditional buyer, and we had to work through that process as well.
Right.
So oftentimes business owners, clients don't understand that this process is not straightforward. It's not like selling your house in the respect of, you have 10 days due diligence in the house. You're going to have an inspection and these things. We don't know what's going to come up.
Right.
It could be a lawsuit that you get served with, a week before closing. I've seen that happen. It could be a client who maybe didn't tell us about an issue that came up in a background check.
Right.
And we've got to navigate that, get the buyer comfortable with what that issue is. So I guess what I'm asking you to talk about a little bit is you've handled those ups and downs, those unforeseen issues, with patience. You understood, and I think that's part of maybe being a business owner. But what I want people to hear from you is that this is a process. It's not a straight road. So how did you navigate those?
Yeah, the first one was a little aggravating because I knew kind of who they were being within the industry. So the perception was financially, this shouldn't have been a problem.
Right.
And I both found out later, all the questions and digging was due to the fact they really were not in the right financial position. So yeah, it became a little frustrating, right? We thought we were done with all the questions. And like you said, lo and behold, you woke up the next morning and here's a new request for 12 more things, right? So yeah, patience is a virtue. Bourbon helps on occasion. That was probably for the nighttime. But yeah, you had to be really calm, right? I think part of that though, I wanted it sold.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of being hasty or aggressive toward it, I knew we weren't going to have 50 offers lining up. So
Right.
it was going to be a bidding war. So I think part of that was just wanting to be patient and nurture through that relationship. But it finally got to the point where it became obvious. So the best thing was, like what you had commented, your team was still looking for, what do you want to call it, a backup plan or just to keep other prospects fresh. And it paid off, because if we had just settled and said, listen, don't waste your time, this is a done deal. I forget how many weeks it took us to be through that first transaction that didn't go through. It was weeks.
Yeah.
So we could have wasted all that time. But in the meantime, you had other things lined up.
Well, and that's the benefit of candidly working on a success fee. I'm in this business to help people, but also to provide for my family and make some money. So if we rest our laurels on a deal that's 50% is going to fall through, we're in bad shape. So, but I hear you. You also Gail was very involved in this process. I would call you, I would call Gail for certain things, and both of you were extremely responsive. I remember talking to you one night on your back porch. You were drinking a bottle of wine, shooting squirrels with a BB gun, I
Yes,
think.
sir. But Gail was there too, so
There you go.
right. She was just drinking the wine.
There
So,
you go.
no BB gun
But the
squirrel
point
hunting for
is,
her.
you were answering the phone and responsive.
Right.
This is not again a 9 to 5. There are things that are gonna come up and that are time sensitive.
Yeah, if you
and
want
you
it
guys,
done and you're trying to sell your business, right, you better figure out on top of whatever's going on in your daily life, you better find an extra 20 to 30 hours a week because potentially that's what it's going to take to make sure that you're delivering all the goods, all the data, all the information. And right, if you built a decent business, you take a call from a client at 7:30 at
Yeah.
night. Why wouldn't I take it from my advisor who's helping me to get the deal done?
Yeah.
But you better
Right.
have the time ready. You can't just sign the contract, go, okay, you're my guy, and just expect to get a call one day and say, here's your money.
Yeah. Have the time or build the team.
Right.
Build the trusted advisors. Maybe there's a key employee who can let in to the process because it is intense. And I just thank you for echoing that for our listeners so that they can understand that.
Yeah, we might have collectively, now that I'm thinking about the team, there might have been a collective 100 hours of effort put in.
Yep.
Right? Just between everybody combined. It's
Yep.
a lot of time. But,
Yeah.
but the result, it was worth it.
Yeah.
It was worth
Yeah.
it.
Steve, I really appreciate you being a guest here on the Power Exit podcast.
Yeah, it's been fun.
More importantly, I appreciate the faith you put in us to help you sell your business. So thank you for being a friend, a client of Marsh Creek, and
Yeah.
a guest on the Power Exit podcast. We
I mean,
appreciate you.
thanks for everything you guys did. It worked out great for everybody.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
awesome, man.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you.
sir.